Hi everyone, welcome to this week's English. We're going to be carrying on looking at suspense writing. Last week we looked at The Curse of Cogston House, which was the book that we read together. This week, as I said, we're going to be looking at a different text. Now this text is called The Water Tower, and it is a text I've taught before. I absolutely love it. I hope you will too. After we've looked at it, the rest of this week is going to be spent planning your suspense story, and then next week you will be writing it. So by the end of next week, you will have your own suspense story. You can use bits of the first book, bits of this book if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Now, today we're going to be identifying the key features of suspense writing in a different text. We've already looked at the features last week. Today you're going to be taking that knowledge and applying it to something new. So, just to recap, what does the word suspense mean to you? And can you think of any other words that are the same as suspense? Okay, so suspense comes from the Latin word suspendere, which means to hang. Suspense writing should leave you feeling like you're hanging on for dear life. You're waiting for what will happen next. It might use cliffhangers. A suspense story will never answer all of the questions you might have. So again, in the book today, there are going to be things that you wish you knew, the story won't tell you. When you write your story, you wish you'll know everything, but you won't. That's the joy of a suspense story, is you purposefully keep things back. Here are some front covers from some different suspense stories, the ones that I've read, and they are all fantastic. Some of them are slightly older than where you are now, but they're all really good. What sort of things can you see that suggest these are suspense stories? What are some of the features? Okay, so if we have a look together, we can see the colours. The colours are quite dark. Now, we tend to associate these sort of dark colours with a sort of spookier story. If you want a story that's light-hearted, like the David Walliams books, if you notice, the David Walliams books use lots of bright colours, tend to be light and bright, blues, pinks, greens. This does use green, but it uses a much darker, duller green. The blue here, very dull. The text is very blocky. It's very serious looking. The titles, if we have a look at the titles, they don't really give away what's going on. We've got Gone, well, what's gone? Shade's Children, who knows? And Undertow, again. All of these features of suspense that are just coming across in the title. So if you have a look at the front cover of the book we're going to be reading today, it's called The Water Tower. What do you notice that's similar? Well, the first thing I noticed similar are the colours. So again, we've got the dark greens, we've got the blacks, we've got the very dark colours. The text is very similar. What do we think the story will be about? Now, what I'd like you to do is pause the video in a second and answer these two questions, please. What do you notice on the colours used in the front cover? Why do you think these colours have been chosen? Why do they choose those darker colours? And what do you think the story will be about? What clues have you used? Here's the front cover. We don't know a lot yet. We can't possibly know a lot yet. But from what we do know, just from looking at the cover, have a go at answering these questions, please. Off you go. Okay, and you're back. So, what you could have said is looking at the colours. The reason that it might use darker colours is because it's trying to create that sense of menace, the shadowy effect, creating shadows. What do you think the story will be about? Well, the only thing that we know for certain so far is it's going to involve some kind of water tower. You may have made a prediction about who might be in it, but all we can tell at the moment is we've got some kind of water tower, and you might have talked about the pulse coming out of it. Maybe you think it's some kind of signal. I don't know. You might have noticed the symbol here. I'm not going to say too much more about that yet. Time to read. Sit back, relax, and enjoy while I do my favourite thing, which is read you a suspense story. The story is called The Water Tower. The Water Tower by Gary Crew. Nobody in Preston could remember when the water tower was built, or who had built it. But there it stood on Shooter's Hill, its iron legs rusted, its egg-shaped tank warped and leaking, casting a long dark shadow across the valley, across Preston itself. Bubb's going to pause on each page so that you can have a look at the images, because obviously this is a picture book, so the images are going to be really important. One summer afternoon, Spike Trotter met Bubba D'Angelo by the service station, and together they went up to the tower for a swim. Spike led the way, as usual. "My mother says it's dangerous up there," he said, "but it's worth it, eh?" Bubba puffed on behind. His mother couldn't have cared less where he went. At the summit, Spike stopped to look down on the sweltering town. "Suckers," he grinned, and headed for the tower. Last summer, a security fence had kept trespassers out, but now the metal posts were twisted and flattened, and barbed wire lay coiled across the ground. "You reckon vandals done that?" Bubba asked, recovering his breath. But Spike was already on the top. "Hurry up!" he yelled, throwing open the access hatch. "It's scorching up here." He pulled his shirt over his head, dropped his shorts, and clambered down into the tank. It was dark inside. "The dark's got a sort of colour," Bubba said, squatting on the bottom rung of the ladder. "It's sort of green, like moss, like slimy, dead moss." Spike didn't answer. Except for the ghostly wailing he kept up for the fun of hearing the echo, he might not have been there at all. "Spike?" Bubba called. "Spiky?" Still no answer. So Bubba whistled for a while, then splashed a bit, but only up to his knees. He didn't particularly like the water. He wasn't keen on slipping down naked into its murky dark. And from time to time he glanced up at the shaft of sunlight angling in from the open hatch, imagining. At last Bubba called, "Spiky, I'm going up now. I'm going to get dressed." He guessed that Spike was somewhere beneath him, in the water that eddied and swirled. Bubba stepped out onto the top of the tank. The wind was hot, the glare terrible. Blinking and squinting, he looked about for his towel. It had blown to the far side of the tank and hung there, caught on the head of the valve. "Maybe I should have stayed down," he muttered to himself, tiptoeing across the burning metal. With the towel wrapped around him, he looked for his clothes. Spikes were there, wedged beneath the hatch, and he saw his shirt flapping at the top of the ladder. But where were his shorts? He turned around and around. Nothing. He dropped on his hands and knees and crept to the side of the tank, yelping with each movement at the burning surface seared. He peered over the side. Nothing. He made his way back to the hatch, calling, "Hey, are my pants down there?" "What?" came the response. He repeated the question. Then suddenly, standing on his crumpled shirt, keeping his towels tight around him, Spike's dripping head suddenly appeared. "Nope," he spluttered. "Nothing's down there but water," and he pulled himself free of the dark. Bubba looked about him again. "They've blown away. That's what happened, I bet." Spike laughed. "Doesn't matter," he said, shaking himself and reaching for his clothes. "You've got your towel. Go home in that." Bubba shook his head. "No way. If my mother finds out that I lost my pants, I'm dead." They looked at each other. They knew that this was true. Mama D'Angelo could land a wallop like nobody else in town. "I'll go back," Spike volunteered. "I'll run the whole way. I'll sneak in through your bedroom window and get another pair. Top drawer of your dresser, right?" Bubba nodded. "I'll wait here. I'll get back down out of the sun. Will you be long?" Spike was already on the ladder. "I didn't win the cross country for nothing, did I? I'll run." His last words were lost in the wind. Bubba climbed into the tank. "I'm all right," he muttered. "I'll be all right." But when he looked, the bottom rung was a long way from the light, and the water seemed darker, so he stopped halfway and waited. All about him the tower creaked and groaned. "That's the heat," he reasoned. "The heat expanding the metal." There was a smell. "That's the algae, all rotten and festering." The water eddied and swirled. That's the wind shifting the tower. It's old and rickety. But he was frightened. Very frightened. And rung by rung, so as not to shake the ladder, not to disturb anything, he crept upwards towards the sun. When Bubba reached the top, he lifted himself out and squatted a moment, catching his breath, calming his heart. "I'll get off this stupid thing," he said. "I'll go and wait in the bushes." So he did. He tightened the towel around his stomach, climbed down the outside ladder, and hopped across the burning earth to the patchy shade of gravel-leafed bush. "I'll be safer here," he thought, though from what, exactly, he could not imagine. The sun found him wherever he went, starting blisters on his skin. The hot wind burned his cheeks. How much longer, he wondered. When will he come? Then something moved, way up at the top of the tower, something Bubba couldn't quite make out. "Spike?" Bubba called. "Is that you?" No answer. "Spike," he whispered, getting up. "Spiky?" Look at his eye. A while later, when Spike returned, calling and waving the shots, Bubba stuck his head straight out of the tank. "Oh boy," he said, dressing himself. "If I stayed down there 1 minute longer, I reckon I would have dissolved. The water was great. I had the best swim. I taught myself to lie on the bottom. I could do it to the count of 120. No lie. 2 minutes. Boy, that was good." Spike's eyes narrowed. This was not like Bubba. Not like Bubba at all. "Go on," he said, shoving him. "Show us your fingers then. Show us the water wrinkles. Come on." Bubba turned away. "Nah, no time now," he answered. "My mother will be worried. You know what a worrier she is. She'll be scared something happened to me, won't she?" He shut the hatch with a thud. Deep in the water eddied and swirled. And that's the end of the story. As I say, full of suspense and cliffhangers, and you really want to know what happens next, and you never quite know what happens next. So, it's a really clever book, The Water Tower, and I'm going to point some bits out to you. So I'm just going to go back to it and see if you notice some bits. Hopefully you might have done, but it's really clever when you read it. I told you when we were looking at the front cover to look at this symbol. That one there. Keep an eye out for it. Here it is. Oh. Here it is again. Do you notice this curve on each of the pages? Probably didn't think anything of it the first time. Looks like the shape of this. Oh look, it's even got the lines in it. So, the boys are off for a little swim. All seem quite happy. Almost like when the boys went to Cogston House. They were okay. One was a bit nervous, but the other was alright. There was a fence that used to keep people out. Shame it's not there anymore. They don't hang about. They're straight up there. Straight onto it. Notice the fence is destroyed. Bit weird. Almost as if something's got out. The dark images they use. Look how scared he looks. Again, we've got the curve of the symbol. So, they're in the water tank swimming. Spike's being quite quiet, but they're both in there together. That all seems okay. So far, so good. A little bit creepy. Nothing major yet. Then Bubba decides to get out of the tank. That's great. And we get this image. Bubba climbing out of the tank. Spike nowhere to be seen. And what have we got here? The symbol of the water tower again. So Bubba's out on the top. He realises, oh no, his shorts have gone missing. Spike comes out of the tank. He seems fine. So, oh no, he's lost his shorts. What are we going to do? Well, Spike volunteers to go into town. Down he runs. Through, away from the water tower. Bubba's still at the top of the water tower, remember. Spike's going to run into town. What have we got here? The symbol. So Bubba thinks, oh, I'll wait inside the water tower. So he climbs back down. Billy Chicken's out halfway through. Strange smell. The water. The noises. Something doesn't feel quite right. So Bubba climbs back up to the top, lifts himself out and squatted a moment. So here he is, in this little picture here. Notice again the shape. He decides he's going to get off this stupid thing and wait in the bushes. Meanwhile, Spike's run down the hill. There's the symbol. Spike's run down the hill and's gone into town, ready to get Bubba's shorts. As Spike runs through the town, the people are all looking. What do you think they're looking at? Well, we can see the water towers in the distance. They're all looking up at the water tower. And what do we notice? On his hand. And on his hat. We even got the creepy person in the window, with a couple of faces here and here. And their eyes, look at their eyes. Bubba, waiting in the bushes. He thinks to himself he'll be safe. He's not quite sure what he thinks he'll be safe from, though. The sun found him wherever he went, starting blisters on his skin. The hot wind burned his cheeks. How much longer, he wondered. When will he come? Meanwhile, Spike, climbing in the window to get the shorts. Once again, the symbol. And people looking up at the water tower. The whole town looking in the same direction. And here they are, looking up. Symbols everywhere. Then he hears a noise. He thinks it must be Spike. He calls out to him, but no answer. And all we get is this. Bubba's face. Terrified. Something in the reflection of his eyes. Maybe it's a claw. Maybe it's something else. A little while later, Spike comes back. As Spike comes back, Bubba's climbing out of the water tower. He seems a bit strange. Boasting about swimming. Doesn't really like swimming. Been underwater for 2 whole minutes. That's a long time for someone that doesn't like swimming. Spike's a bit suspicious. Asks him to show the water wrinkles. You know, if you get out of water, if you've been in there for a while, your fingers end up with wrinkles on them. Bubba turns away. Nah, not today. His mum will be worried. That's funny, I'm sure earlier in the text it said that his mum didn't worry about him at all. Strange. And then what's that on the back of his hand? Purposefully not going to give you my opinion on what it all means, because the whole point of a suspense story like this is it's down to you to decide what you think might be happening. There's lots of theories. I've had children I've taught before saying that they think he's changed, he's been replaced by a clone of some kind. Thinks that all happened to all of the villagers, or the people in the town. Some people think that it was some sort of monster that came out of the water tank. Some people think that Spike changed when he went missing earlier on in the story. The point is, we don't know, and it's up to you to decide, and there's no right answer or wrong answer. So, that was the Water Tower. Different to the Curse of Cogston House, but some of the themes are the same. And your task for today is going to be to compare the two books on different parts. So I'm going to show you it now. So I've put it on Seesaw for you. It will go live by the time you need it. And I'm just going to go so that you can see it. Oh no, wrong button. Please, so apologies, bear with me. Let me move me. So, let's say the slides will be here, and it will come up with this task here. So tomorrow you'll be able to see it, or today, sorry, I'm a day ahead of you. Right, here we go. It looks a bit like this. So I've done the first one for you. So the first thing it's looking at is characters. In the Curse of Cogston House, you're then going to put what the characters are in that book. So the two boys, and then we have the two girls from earlier on, probably teenagers, seem to be thrill seekers by going places that they shouldn't. What happens in the Water Tower? Well, we've got two boys who are friends, so very similar to the Curse of Cogston House. Again, both probably teenagers. They go to places they shouldn't. They shouldn't really go to the Water Tower. And Spike seems more confident than Bubba, the same way you've got a character in the Curse of Cogston House that's more confident than the other one. Then we're going to talk about similarities and differences between the two books. So similarities for characters, only characters, we're not focusing on anything else yet, is both use two main characters with a similar relationship. They're both friends. Both end up with something happening to one of the characters, not both, one of them. Differences, well, in the Water Tower, both boys seem relatively happy to break the rules, whereas in the Curse of Cogston House, one isn't very happy. So what you're going to do is you're going to do the same thing for setting, the build-up, which is sort of the early part of the story, the main event, and the conclusion. You put what happens in each, and then what's similar about them in that part, and what's different about them in that part. And that's going to help you later on in the week to plan your own, because you're going to take bits from each or make up your own idea and do it for yourself. Okay? So, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the Water Tower. Be interested to see whether you preferred it to the Curse of Cogston House or not. I like it. For now, speak to you later. Bye-bye.